So, about the endocrine system. This is chapter 45. I'm going to teach 45, then 43, then 44, so that we have 43 after a weekend. Your endocrine system is a communication system. It is alongside of the nervous system. I believe the nervous system is a communication system, is that correct?
Yeah.
Communicates information throughout the course of the body. Well, the endocrine does the same thing too, but it's a long-lasting system. It's a system that takes a while for the communication to get there. And then once it gets there, this communication sticks around for a while. In other words, when one hormone is produced in one gland in one part of the body, and that hormone is sent to another part of the body, it takes a while for that sending process to occur. But once it's been sent, the hormone sticks around for a while and instigates change for a longer period of time than like a neuron does. A neuron, the signal is picked up, sent back and forth throughout that entire simple cycle that you create. And that happens very quickly, and the signal doesn't perpetuate. It just is there 1 minute and absent the next. But this type of signaling is more long-lasting. And we'll see that it's a very this regulates a lot of processes, but I think we'll get there over the course of the next day or two. As far as your different hormones, I think I want you to know what a hormone is. It's a chemical signal. It's a long-lasting chemical signal that is produced by glands. So instead of using the word produced, I like to use the word secreted. So I'll say that
kind of just gross as secretes gastric juices is the worst thing you've ever said.
Moist. The word moist.
Well, we're not just talking about secreting gastric juices anymore. We're talking about secreting just about anything and everything. So, but in this case, I think we're going to focus our efforts on secreting a hormone or a communication device for use somewhere else throughout the body, and that's what an endocrine gland is. It is a gland, a piece of tissue that is secretory in that it secretes, which means it either calls forward or it pulls into the organ, or maybe it makes it itself, and it's going to send that hormone out. So that's the endocrine part, is that it's a secretory organ, an organ that gets stuff ready to be sent away. Like a good example that we've used countless times, I'm going to go through it again, is the pancreas, which is making what two hormones, at least that I'm concerned about? Insulin and the alpha cells are making which one? And the beta cells are making? Okay, so I want us to know those two differences right away. And that's made in the liver, right? Right? Definitely the pancreas. We want to make sure we're paying attention. So the pancreas is making those two hormones. So I would say the pancreas is an endocrine gland in that it is able to make insulin and glucagon and then send them away. Cool. The other point to make there too, and it's a good trick question, is that the pancreas is also an exocrine gland because it's using its own beta, its own glucagon and insulin as well. We've mentioned this before, but some other communication devices aside from hormones are the pheromones, which are chemical signals that allow for individual communication. These are the smells that are hard to smell. They're the chemicals that are produced by a body that instigate change, maybe over a long distance, you could say. Right? This is what allows for the hidden communication between male and female sometimes, I think. Yay? Okay. Let's talk about a simple hormone pathway, which is a lot of times negative feedback, because negative feedback mechanisms are always mechanisms that are highly controlled and very well controlled. Cool so far? We good? We'll start off with your duodenum, which is in the large intestine, right? Small intestine. It's the last section of your small intestine.
First.
Good, the first, which would be receiving the acid chyme. Agreed? And the acid chyme has a pH that's above or below 7. And that's what acid would instigate, is a pH that's definitely below 7. What's the valve that was right before the duodenum? What? Did you say pyloric?
Yeah.
Good job. And what was right before pyloric sphincter? What chamber? Okay, the stomach. Good. So the stomach was producing HCl, right? What type of cells was producing the HCl?
No. It's the parietal.
Parietal cells are producing the HCl, right? Parietal. What? The chief cells are making pepsinogen. Pepsinogen is activated into pepsin, correct? Okay, good. But you end up with this HCl that ends up in the duodenum. The acid chyme shows up there, correct? Now, which organ is going to fix this problem? You know this already. The pancreas is producing an alkaline solution that ends up in the duodenum, correct? But we're going to talk about the method of communication, which is a hormone-based communication system that is in the digestive process that you kind of already are aware of. You're just not aware of like the pieces. Your duodenum has different types of cells. We don't really I haven't really taught you this too much, but one of the types of cells is the S cell. Oh God, this is all I need you to know right now. The duodenum has S cells. Now, S cells, the S has to obviously stand for something, right? They're producing a hormone called secretin. So they secrete secretin. Now, you're like, okay, Mr. Fields, now you're just making it up, and I'm really not. I don't know how else to say that. It's really secretin. Now, what do we know about your small intestine? When we think of its like one word function, what is it? Absorption. And absorption so that it can go where? To the colon, right?
No, small intestine is for
Where would you absorb to?
large intestine. Oh.
Exactly. So we're thinking lots of little blood vessels, right? When we think of small intestine, we think of absorption, so we have to think of little blood vessels that are running throughout the small intestine, right? To allow for the absorption. Agreed? Now, all these organs that are in the mix there, and my little friend back there can help you out with that, they're all next to each other, right?
Oh God, I hate that noise.
Too out of reach.
And it works out that your secretin,
Stop making that noise.
ends up going into the blood vessel, or blood vessels that are running throughout the small intestine. Yay?
Yay.
So secretin ends up in the blood vessels. And secretin shows up throughout all these blood vessels, ends up at the pancreas, which is more by chance than anything else, just because the pancreas is close to all these blood vessels. Secretin ends up at your pancreas. The pancreas recognizes this as a certain signal, and its purpose, or what it does, is the pancreas reads the signal and believes or decides that its solution to this is to produce bicarbonate. Now, this is about like the 50th time that we've talked about bicarbonate in biological systems, it would seem. It's been a member of respiration. We talked about how bicarbonate was produced by the CO2 being produced from your cells. But we know that this bicarbonate acts as a buffer. Now, in the event that you have forgotten or need to know what a buffer is, this is for all you guys out there that really want to understand the biochemistry aspect of science. It's just like this is the logic of like the engineering of life, basically. So even if you want to be an engineer, this is how you would engineer something. Bicarbonate actually has one of two options. If you add an acid, you're adding H+, and that forms H2CO3. If you are adding a base, that takes away H+, so you form CO3 2-. Do you see how there is a response that bicarbonate can do depending upon if it's an acidic or a basic condition? It's like the bicarbonate is a fork in the road, and you can go left or right depending on which way the wind blows you, essentially. So this buffer system is in response. And let me one-up this real quick. I know that pre-AP chemistry does this. I know that I have done this in the years past. I don't know if I did it when I had some of you guys in my class. Do y'all use the pH probes? Do y'all know what I'm talking about with a pH probe?
Yeah.
pH probe is like, it looks about something like this, the size of this marker, and you put it in a solution, and you determine if the solution is acidic or basic by hooking it up to a calculator. Right? At the end of the day, as a teacher, you know that the students have been using this pH meter, but you don't necessarily know if it's got an acid or a base on it. Now, if this had acid on it, what should you pour on it? Base. If this had base on it, what would you pour on it? But you can't see which one it is, correct? So you need to add a chemical that could go either which way. The bicarbonate buffer could go either which way. Now maybe that might help you understand why you produce HCO3- in your blood. That's how you carry. I think that was a test question, wasn't it? That's how you carry your carbon dioxide in your blood. Not on hemoglobin. It's bicarbonate. That was a test question, was it not?
I thought you said water.
It binds with water to produce bicarbonate. It's carried as bicarbonate. Did you get that right?
Got that wrong.
Yeah. Whoa, wait, are you talking about the hemoglobin question?
Well,
Yeah, I know I did.
definitely carbon dioxide is not carried on hemoglobin like oxygen is. It's carried as bicarbonate, H2O3 minus. Did I get that right?
Yeah,
Nope.
whether permitted.
Did I get that right?
I knew like
Blood. So carbon dioxide is carried in blood as bicarbonate, H2O3 minus.
I was thinking more free blood. 'Cause I knew like you could get when like you dive down really deep, pressure would cause CO2 levels.
Not as fast as it would nitrogen. That's called the bins.
Okay, I couldn't remember.
It messes with your nitrogen saturation. You can lose. You can become like you can have you can like lose sensation in like your limbs of your body.
I got the question.
You can become like a quadriplegic or paraplegic. Yeah. Raise your hand if you get the H2O3 minus buffer system question right.
I mean, I don't remember.
I don't remember.
Like,
I got it wrong.
I actually have pretty confident with it.
Yeah.
Remember you were
Y'all did watch all the videos I posted, right?
Everyone.
Did what?
Posted them on Mustang Chemistry. Did anyone watch them?
Well, he probably did because he had to make them in class because we came over recently before.
Wait,
Good.
watch this AP thing.
And so
I have no clue what's going on right now.
all my videos are posted on Mustang Chemistry.
Oh. No, I thought you were talking about.
This would explain the low view count.
Okay, no, I've watched your videos before. I'm not even gonna get into
So I'm recording this video right now, but we'll just let it be known that no one will ever watch it, so I can say whatever I want to.
You recording right now?
Right now. But it doesn't really matter because, again, no one will watch this.
I'll watch it tonight. I'll send you a video of me watching your
Did
video.
you give like a shout out to like a new student every time? And so they'd be like, "Hey, did you give my shout out?" They're like, "What did you do?"
Amazing.
You
Um,
you should tag like Justin Bieber in your videos and then
Yeah.
I've had like just some
Okay, neat. Wow. So at any rate, H2O3 minus, of course, ends up neutralizing any kind of unique pH, and in fact, it will neutralize the low pH that's created in the small intestine, the first part, the duodenum. Do you understand how this works? This is a negative feedback system. One chemical starts a process that runs to actually neutralize itself. That's like, I don't know how to put that, but like the acidity turns on the chemical that turns off its acid component. It's like automated shutdown. Pretty cool stuff. Good so far?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Let's move forward and let's talk about the nervous and endocrine system and how they all work together. The brain, of course, is like it still has to be in control. I mean, it's got to be the major site of control for the endocrine system still. So even though they're both all about communication, I want you to see that this nervous system brain-based communication is still infinitely superior. Is at a higher level of importance than the endocrine system communication. So in other words, the brain still is in control of this entirely. And I think one thing we're going to discuss today is how the brain can be in this level of control. Yes? It says hypothalamus. Now I've got an arrow from the brain to the endocrine system, and I wrote down hypothalamus. And I want you to really understand that the connection point to me from your brain, the thing that is the part of your brain that is starting an endocrine-based process is going to be the hypothalamus. You'll see in a second that we could make a case that it's the pituitary gland, but I would say it's definitely the hypothalamus. I would say it's hypothalamus. This is where it begins. Good so far. Now, to put this in perspective of where we're at, and I kind of want you just to draw this. Please don't draw any of the black here, because that actually comes for something later. So no black drawn here at all. I really just want you to draw the brain and label this H, P, and A like that. And I like there being the H that's kind of below the brain a little bit, and then like a little stem with these two little circles that is the P and A. and I'll make sense of that in just a second with you.
Second car.
Might want to designate, instead of H, we write down hypothalamus so that we know kind of where we're talking about. And the hypothalamus is the portion of the brain that receives info from the body. To me, it's, when I say from the body, that's somehow been a nervous system information gathering process. And the hypothalamus is going to stimulate the entire system, the entire endocrine system. And you're going to start to see today that chain reaction that begins with the hypothalamus. And then I wrote like this uniquely looking little arrow because I want you to see there's like this direct connection almost, and that's kind of coming back to the picture. I want you to see the direct connection that H is making with both P and A, which stands for your anterior and posterior parts of the pituitary gland. Notice that I have an I on the far right side. I'm doing that so you can see where the front versus where the back of the head is. Now, we will find that the anterior and posterior pituitary glands obviously are extremely important. Certainly they're important in regulating a lot of other hormone systems. So what I'm trying to get you to do is see this domino effect. Make sure I got your attention 100% real quick. Your hypothalamus. Hypothalamus starts a chain process that runs down your pituitary glands. And your pituitary glands themselves make their own hormones that go on and affect other endocrine glands. So it's like the hypothalamus makes a hormone that travels right down south, affects your pituitary glands, which then produce hormones that travel to another part of the body, which affect another gland. Do you see this like
Chain reaction.
It is a nuclear chain reaction, just not nuclear. Okay. Good. Now the reason that I have the black lines in there is to describe, I guess, a situation on what would happen if you had an issue with this. Have I told you guys about Jamie's brother?
No.
No.
Okay, so when I first met him, he was like 6 years old, I think 6 or 7, and 6 or 7 year olds should be like what, this big maybe?
Sure.
He's about this big. He's 11 now, and he's like this tall. That would be short for an 11-year-old, correct? Let's say it's significantly short for an 11-year-old. The problem that he has is that he has this growth plate that's about right here. What that does is that starts to block and cut off the pituitary gland. So he has a disconnect here, and for all practical purposes, his pituitary gland is being sealed off more and more each day. So what he lacks is one of the hormones that's produced by your pituitary, which is your growth hormone. He lacks. What happens? Kid doesn't grow. The solution to it is going to be to give him growth hormone. He gets shots 6 nights a week, and he gets those shots in different parts of the body to stimulate his growth. If he didn't have that, he'd be still way down here. Now you'll find that the other hormones that we're going to mention that are produced by this system are they're an issue as well. He's lacking a lot of these hormones, which means there's going to be a lot of developmental things that will be delayed in him. Now the other problem is that this growth plate that's growing this way is also now starting to grow this way. So his optic nerve is malfunctioning, which is, if you ever see him, see you will or won't, but you'll see that like his left eye points downward the entire time. You would think that he was looking down. He has what's called like a lazy eye, an eye that cannot respond to the cortex anymore. His sight in it is non-existent. It should just be a glass eye. His other eye is being affected more so daily, and it's now become more of a problem that it's, even with corrected vision, it's still very poor. And what he has lost in this is he has a loss of depth perception to like a significant degree. So like if you go play video games with him, whereas I can see depth, he can't. It's all flat. It's not 3D, it's not even really 2D. It's just 1D to him. The ball will be like coming at him and it'll be over there and he'll kick it because he thinks it's right here. There is no depth perception for him. So he has like this significant issue that he will probably battle for before he his life. Now, the fix, a simple fix would be to just remove this plate, which is growing in this unique fashion. The problem is that there's only like 15 people in this country that are physicians that have ever operated on this type of condition. This condition happens to like less than 30 people documented ever. and the procedure is like a 16-hour surgical procedure. So you're talking about like having to fly in doctors from about 3 or 4 major cities throughout the nation and get them all together to do this case. And typically when a case like this is done, if you can't get those people together, you actually like just have someone doing it that's never done one before, never even seen one done. So it's a little difficult to do. The problem that could exist one day is that possibly if you delay this, this might start to cut off more, which could be bad, or maybe it starts going in a unique direction that starts to cause seizures. And when that happens, then something would have to be done. For now, I think the decision the parents have is to wait. Yes, sir.
How old is he?
Right now he's 11.
Yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, because eventually when the growth plates stop growing, but if it's already at that point, he's 11.
That would be an issue, right? And you have to remember that the growth hormone will continue to be implemented as long as he needs it to get what is natural. And there's no telling like what other delayed effects will exist with him. That makes sense? You know, he is halfway through his normal like growing age limit. For a guy, for a male, age growth is like goes to about the age of 22, give or take. So he's still got years of growth that he's got to focus on. Does that make sense? So it would make sense that this could possibly one day become an issue. And the solution to it is quite extreme. I mean, they have to like rip off this, go in this way to try to get it upward, go in through here, drill here, and that's how they insert their tools, is through this, through there, and through there. And of course, like you could understand that this is like on the very, very bottom of the brain. And any of these pieces right through here, that's why I drew this little black, that's about where the medulla is in your cerebellum. You just like slightly touch those things, body shuts down.
Really?
That is like the off button, essentially. Like that would cause brain death. And what we're talking about here is having to essentially drill or chisel bone right there. So you understand like the detail that would be involved in that and the amazing risk that's involved. This is like a 60% mortality risk. So the highest for pediatricians. You have to have like you're a neurological pediatrician, which is like very few out there. So it's very intense. But that's just kind of giving you an example of what it would be or what would exist if you had a malfunction on the system.
Kind of a Debbie Downer. Kind of sad.
It kind of is, but you know what? He's a very, very happy child.
I'm sad. I kind of want him to do it, but like it's dangerous.
Well, it's. I think that's why they don't do it. It's way too dangerous.
And it's like freaking expensive.
The expenses isn't different. The way medical insurance works out, and I think for a lot of individuals, and really you just gotta focus on what each name is, where it's from, and what it's doing. I think it's pretty simple stuff, like your posterior pituitary, the ones that are on the right. Oxytocin, an antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic is what allows for the retention of water in your kidneys. Oxytocin is what stimulates contractions of uterus. In your anterior pituitary, you have growth hormone, which we've already talked about, affects cells that need growth, specifically cells of the muscle, and even more specifically, cells of the bone, which is why when we deposit, or not we, but when his parents give him the growth hormone shot, they stick a needle that's pretty big, and they stick it about as close to bone as you can get, because growth hormone would affect the bone. So this needle for growth hormone shot has to end up where you go so you get the growth, which is a
6 nights a
real
week.
six
Where
nights
do
a
they
week.
usually shoot?
Arm, one butt, I think, or 2 butts. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Where else does he get it?
Like,
I think quads. I think quads, butt, and arm. Yes.
Does the condition affect his learning ability?
No, his everything cortex is fine. So like his attitude, he's very well aware of his condition. I mean, but he's like a little A student. He's very, very intelligent. There's nothing wrong with like any developmental mental capacity. It's just physically, his brain, the bottom part of his brain that turns on all of these hormone systems just doesn't work. So anything that you see here, and you can take this for whichever way you want to, these are going to have problems with. Now in some cases like oxytocin, it doesn't matter. But in the case of luteinizing or follicle stimulating, it could matter. Thyroid doesn't really matter because he's a little kid, so you don't have to worry about his thyroid too much. Thyroid is what stimulates metabolism. He can eat whatever he wants to. One day that could be a problem, though. Adrenal cortex, we'll talk more about what that has to do tomorrow, the adrenal corticotropic hormone, how it stimulates the adrenal cortex. Prolactin, milk production. I think most of these right through here are pretty logical, very sensible. I don't see anything here that to me it's just like impossible to really understand. It's really just a note card thing, going what the hormones are, where they're produced, and what they do. Now, before you leave, this is like the last thing. You look at those hormones on either which side from the pituitary. Does it say that, in most cases, it doesn't say that it goes to a cell and starts a process. It seems like these hormones are going to somewhere else, like another structure, and starting up their process. Like, for instance, thyroid stimulating hormone. It doesn't say that it makes a metabolic hormone. That's what the thyroid does. It doesn't say that it makes a metabolism hormone. It makes a hormone that turns on your thyroid, and your thyroid in turn turns on a metabolism hormone. Do you see how these are what I would call your tropic-based hormones? Hormones that just affect another gland, and that's it. So these are your tropic hormones, the majority of them. That's all that I have for today. I would say quizzes tomorrow could happen. Probably want to look at the rest of your hormones, maybe get note cards going, and it'll be fun. See y'all tomorrow.
What about this?
And the rest of the hormones we haven't talked about yet.
I'm missing that in notes tomorrow.
Yes.
Put my name on which paper?
You know.